All right. Sorry to keep you guys waiting, but I had another stream earlier, and as you may know, I haven't been doing great lately. SIBO is basically an infection that resulted from my hernia surgeries, and it has caused me incredible amounts of excruciating pain and missed sleep and brain fog and all sorts of unpleasant things. Getting better, but it started hurting again between streams, so I needed a minute to work through that. But here I am. And so Charlie Kirk shot, unalived, lots of fallout is going to occur from this. And it is highly suspicious due to the political utility and the fact that that political utility potential is so congruent with the trajectory that we have been experiencing, right? I mean, you can't discount that. It is entirely possible that somebody just got sick of him running his mouth, you know? And the main thing that I'm here to comment on, I guess, is the naivety that I see that is truly dangerous and disturbing. A lot of people seem to really believe that this guy was sincere, that he meant well. And even, you know, a lot of the people on the other side of the aisle from him, I consider myself on neither side. And I'm going to explain why momentarily. But, you know, even the people on the other side generally kind of just view him as a misguided Christian fundamentalist. I don't think it's that innocent, and I really think it's ridiculous and insane to believe it is. He was a paid propagandist, period, end of story. And his job was basically this agnotologist that I put in the title. That's not really a thing. Agnotology is the study of how ignorance and misinformation is distributed throughout cultures. But that was fundamentally his job. I just saw a interview with a leading neuroscientist, and that was basically the subject was that there's a war on consciousness, that the evidence for some sort of panpsychist, at least element in our universe, has been obviously and deliberately suppressed. People have been saying this since Babylonia. Different AI systems will tell you that the mysteries which taught reason, science, philosophy, mathematics, music, and esotericism as one thing, basically, that they were banned to control thought and to undermine the sovereignty of the population. Charlie Kirk's job was to continue as an archon, and the real archons were actually it was the title of a magistrate in Rome. They were sent into the mysteries as saboteurs and spies, and Christianity, for example, was built from their pillaging on the bones of Hermes, you know, and that's his primary function. I don't believe that he believed the shit that came out of his mouth. And I agree with a lot of what he said. I believe that people should have the right to change their gender, but I don't believe that children should be subjected to that. I think that when it became a trend there were a lot of children that were put in danger by their mentally unstable, virtue signaling, fame whore parents, etc. You know what I mean? I do believe in Second Amendment rights. You know, ironically, one of the things Kirk said was that it's worth a few if we get to keep the Second Amendment right. And it's like, hope you meant that, dude. You know, but and freedom of speech, you know, he would defend that. But he's really coming from the point of view of like, you can do it your own way if it's done just how I say. You know, freedom of choice is made for you. Freedom of speech, as long as you are speaking within certain parameters. You know what I mean? Like, of course, none of it's really what it's advertised as. But the point I'm making with that is that all propagandists work that way. You know, it doesn't matter if you're talking about Hitler or Mussolini or Donald Trump or Joe Biden or whoever. The whole game is based around taking a ball of, you know, like the two-party system is a false dichotomy, you know, it's, and then they take a ball of dichotomous dung and they roll it down both sides of the aisle. So they're part of the agenda to take your rights away is on the liberal side, right? They're trying to mandate certain medications. They want to control your speech. You know, there are other things that they do on behalf of their masters. And then on the other side, they have the right with a different task list. But it's all mixed with things that any reasonable, sane person would support, right? Like if you disagree with everything that both liberals and conservatives stand for, you're an idiot. You know what I mean? You're just indoctrinated. You're not a free thinker. Because that's the point. You know, it doesn't work if they don't integrate both reasonable and true things with lies and manipulation and distortions and propaganda, you know, or those things that serve that propaganda. What's going on, Athena? Sure, murder is wrong. I mean, I don't really disagree with that, but here's the thing. Like, I'm neurodivergent, right? I think like Spock from Star Trek, really, you know, and we have a strong sense of justice, but it's more or less based on logic. And the reality is that it's sad for his daughters, or I think he had 2 daughters, and his wife, and whoever else, you know, but the amount of harm that is correlated with him existing versus the amount of harm that comes from him suddenly not existing, there's no question about what the favorable outcome is, you know. So I don't miss him, you know. I'm not sad. What bothers me is that this is going to be spun into political fodder. That's probably why it happened. You know, one of the things that people also get wrong, I think, like the Trump assassination attempt, not real. Definitely not real. But did that firefighter lose his life? Probably. You know, and I've noticed that people that say it's staged assume that that part wasn't real either. Why? Collateral damage means nothing to these people. There is no element of ethics or morality involved in the equation. If it serves their purposes strategically, it doesn't matter if it's one of their servants. You know, I think these people that get involved with them, like Kirk and Shapiro and probably Rogan too, they really think that they're one of them and that that's going to keep them safe. But that's so goddamn stupid, it's unbelievable. It was probably the same people, or at least very likely the same people that signed his paychecks, basically, that ordered this to happen or arranged it. I'm not saying that that's a fact. I'm just saying I would not be one bit surprised. And it does, conspiracy theories can be evaluated by certain metrics for their plausibility, right? One of them is are there too many conspirators required? Flat Earth dies on, right out the gate because of that. It doesn't make it past the first one. And if a conspiracy theory does manage to pass the gates, right, the next question you have to ask in order to solve it is the cui bono. Who benefits? And so the possibility that this is some psyop type shit, it passes everything that's required for a plausible conspiracy theory. So there's that element as well. I think that people really need to wake up to the fact that it's not what they wouldn't do that or something. The people that dropped nukes on Nagasaki and Hiroshima and burned the shadows of moms and dogs and babies into sidewalks aren't going to off one of their own puppets in order to advance their political agenda. Really? Or a firefighter or something. Stop it, people. The time has come to snap the fuck out of it and face reality. There's a good chance that he's sitting on a beach with Epstein right now somewhere. Do you know what I mean? The degree to which this is all theater can't be underestimated either. We can't be certain, but we should not eliminate any possibilities because the historical precedent is there for this level of shenanigans on the part of the overlords. Another thing that I think people really miss is with the Trump assassination, a lot of people on the left are like, oh yeah, the Trump administration was in on it and it was fake. And it's like, you can't be that, narrow. Can you really? If that's true, there are bigger powers involved. There would have to be. This is not something that Trump could arrange with the Secret Service and the local police and all of the constituents that would have had to have been involved unless it was coming from above him somewhere in the centralized power of the United States government. It's people get almost there. Like Winston Churchill once said, man occasionally stumbles upon the truth, but he usually just picks himself up and keeps going. It's like that. So, yeah, I mean, this probably isn't going to be a super long stream because what else can you say about that? The man was a propagandist and he served a purpose. And unfortunately for him, if this even really happened, he served more of a purpose in this context, and especially considering the fact that he actually said a few people a year is a fair price to retain our Second Amendment. It's just a little bit too ironic, and maybe that's why, maybe it was just some nut job, and he saw the irony there and couldn't help himself. I almost can't say that I blame him. By the way, you guys, we are demonetized, so please hit the like button, share, subscribe, turn on the bell notifications. Follow us on Substack. I have a website where you can find plant medicine products and whatnot. I do consultations, and our Patreon is a great place to find our premium content. You can join our Discord, where we have lots of like roundtable sessions and whatnot that get pretty interesting and thought-provoking. So we do appreciate support. If you guys have any questions, or you want my opinion on anything, please feel free to pop it into the chat. I'm kind of cycling through my thoughts right now, trying to see if there's anything really essential that I feel like I've missed here. The main thing is just the naivety that people still have around all this kind of stuff. And we're not in a position where we're really fringe even at this point to say things like this, that it could have been a psyop, or, there is enough evidence, there's enough historical precedent that these people actually operate along those lines, that the people that just outright dismiss these things as possibilities are actually the nut jobs now. They're the ones that are engaging selective perception in order to maintain these capacities to maintain, to carry cognitive dissonance and to engage selective perception are supposed to be evolutionary adaptations that help us to stay alive, right? Like heuristic bias. You're not afraid to drive your car because, you've done it a million other times and nothing happened those times, so nothing's going to happen this time, right? But that's not real. But it still helps you not to panic and drive off a cliff accidentally. You know what I mean? So it's like these mechanisms that were developed by evolution, or inculcated into our being by the universal mind, however it actually works, have sort of turned on us. They've been turned on us, through social engineering, and they're threatening our freedom and our existence, really. I mean, it truly has become an existential threat. The fear of the people and the manipulation of their stewards, if you can call them that. And the reality is, if we don't snap everyone out of it very quickly, we're all going to end up gone or enslaved. That's not a joke. That's the reality. And whether this was truly a government psyop or black op or just something that happened, it is going to be turned towards that end of driving this authoritarian consolidation of power further, pushing the agenda, no matter how you slice it. And really, in terms of actionable solutions, it's a tough one. One of the things that I've learned the hard way over the last 7 years having this YouTube channel is that telling people stuff doesn't really do anything anymore. The cognitive dissonance, the fear, the habituation, the acclimation, there are, and there's plenty more. There are all of these influences that have converged to sort of solidify people's dispositions and outlooks, on all this stuff. But life is a stage, and we are indeed players, performers, and portrayers, each another's audience, And we have to at least make an effort to communicate directly, succinctly, and effectively the truth of what's happening in this world and why. You know, Charlie Kirk existed to suppress the emergence of a new paradigm that would overturn the old power structure and render them irrelevant. And his death is going to be used in exactly the same way. So, you know, the first step in curing a cancer is diagnosis. So the first thing we have to do is foment as much recognition and awareness of the strategic deployment of this political dumbfuckery. I don't know what she means by shame, but that's all I have to say about that, you guys. I am going to sign out. Thank you so much for being here. Please do what you can. Let a motherfucker know, you know. Good night.